I still remember that Tuesday afternoon like it was yesterday. The autumn light was streaming through the windows of my studio as I edited wedding photos from the weekend. My name's David Mitchell, and for 15 years I've built my reputation as one of Denver's premier wedding photographers. Ironic, considering what was about to happen. My phone buzzed. It was Greg, a photographer friend who'd been shooting a destination wedding in Aspen the previous weekend. "Hey man, check out these landscapes I got at the Silver Peak Resort. Might give you some ideas for that mountain series you're working on." I clicked the link while balancing my coffee mug, expecting to see snow-capped peaks and alpine meadows. Instead, my world collapsed in an instant. There, in the background of a reception shot, was my wife, Melissa. Her chestnut hair caught the sunlight in that distinctive way I'd photographed 1,000 times. She was leaning into a man I didn't recognize, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. The intimacy was unmistakable. "You still there?" Greg asked after my prolonged silence. "Yeah, these are great. Mind sending me the full album? I'm interested in the venue for a client." My hands trembled as I scrolled through more photos. There she was again. Melissa, in a blue dress. I'd never seen laughing with this stranger by the resort's infinity pool. Another showed them entering a hotel room, his hand guiding her inside. The timestamp showed last Thursday, when she'd told me she was showing properties to out-of-state clients. Our twins, Ethan and Emma, had stayed with my parents that night, because she'd be back late. I locked my studio door and sat in darkness, trying to breathe. Melissa and I had been married for 12 years. We had 10-year-old twins, a beautiful home in Cherry Creek. I thought we had everything. The photos didn't lie. The way she looked at him, I recognized that look. It was how she used to look at me. I wanted to call her immediately, to scream and demand answers, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the photographer in me, the observer, the planner who waits for the perfect moment. So I did something that would change everything. I decided to wait, to watch, to plan. I saved the photos to a secure cloud account, then deleted them from my phone. When Melissa came home that evening, her emerald eyes bright as she kissed my cheek and asked about my day, I smiled and lied just as convincingly as she had been doing. "Just the usual," I said. "How about you? Any luck with those clients from Chicago?" As she launched into an elaborate story about fictional clients, I studied my wife of 12 years like she was a stranger. In many ways, she now was. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in self-control I never knew I possessed. I became a detective in my own marriage, piecing together the fragments of Melissa's deception while maintaining a facade of normalcy. I reached out to Greg with a casual request. "Hey, who was the groom's side staying at in Aspen? Have a client asking about luxury accommodations there." His response confirmed my suspicions. The Silver Peak Resort's executive suites, where rooms started with $200 per night. A quick check of our joint credit card statements showed no such charges. She was either using cash or someone else was paying. I needed more evidence before confronting her. One night, after Melissa fell asleep, I carefully checked her phone. She'd always been protective of it lately, keeping it face down and taking calls in another room. The password had been changed from our anniversary date to something I didn't recognize. Another red flag. The next morning, I dropped the twins at school, then circled back home unexpectedly. Melissa's silver BMW was still in the driveway, though she'd told me she had early showings. I parked down the street and waited. 20 minutes. Later, a black Range Rover pulled up. The driver matched the man from the photos. My stomach clenched as Melissa emerged from our house, checking her surroundings before leaning through his window for a kiss that left no doubt about their relationship. She was wearing the blue dress from the Aspen photos. That night, Emma asked why I wasn't eating my dinner. "Dad, you're just moving your pasta around," she observed, with a child's unfiltered honesty. "Just thinking about a big project, sweetheart," I replied, forcing a smile. Across the table, Melissa chatted about her productive day, showing luxury properties. I studied her animated expressions, the way her slender fingers pushed her hair behind her ear when she was embellishing details, a tell I'd always found endearing. Now it made me sick. "You seem distracted," she said later as we cleaned up. "Everything okay with the Anderson wedding edits?" "Everything's fine," I lied, wondering how we'd become so comfortable deceiving each other. That night, I lay awake beside her, watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. How could she sleep so peacefully while living such a profound lie? The woman beside me, with her familiar freckled shoulders and the small scar on her collarbone from a childhood fall, had become a stranger. The twins' birthday party that weekend was excruciating, watching Melissa charm our friends and family, playing the devoted mother and wife while I knew she was texting him in bathroom breaks. I caught her checking her phone under the table, a secret smile playing on her lips that wasn't meant for me. "You and Melissa are still the perfect couple," my sister commented, watching her organize the cake cutting. "After all these years, she still looks at you like you hung the moon." I nearly choked on my drink. The performance Melissa was giving deserved an Oscar, and I was giving a matching performance, smiling through the pain while plotting my next move. That night, after everyone left and the twins were asleep, I sat alone in my studio, looking at our family portraits on the wall. The happy family that no longer existed. I made my decision. I wouldn't confront her yet. I would plan, prepare, protect myself and the twins from the fallout that was coming. The following Monday, while Melissa was showing properties, I met with Patricia Hernandez, a divorce attorney recommended by a client whose wedding I'd photographed years ago. Her office overlooked downtown Denver, the mountains visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Colorado is a no-fault state," Patricia explained, her voice matter-of-fact. "But if you're concerned about custody, documentation is crucial. Start keeping detailed records of who handles school drop-offs, doctor appointments, extracurriculars." I pulled out my phone. "I've already started a log, and I have evidence of the affair." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Smart. Now let's talk." Finances. I'd always handled our taxes and investments, but Patricia advised me to gather comprehensive documentation of all assets. That evening, I created a secure cloud folder with statements from our joint accounts, retirement funds, property deeds, and tax returns. The next challenge was more delicate. Securing my photography business. Melissa had helped with bookkeeping early on, but hadn't been involved for years. Still in a divorce, my studio and client list could be considered marital assets. I began quietly consulting with a business attorney about restructuring. Meanwhile, I updated my portfolio and reached out to contacts in Portland, where my college roommate Mark had been trying to get me to relocate for years. "Seriously considering your offer to partner on that studio space," I texted him. "Can we talk details next week?" The twins complicated everything. Ethan with his sensitive nature, and Emma with her perceptive questions. I couldn't bear the thought of being separated from them, but I also couldn't stay in this toxic marriage. One evening, Emma found me staring at property listings on my laptop. "Are we moving, Dad?" she asked, her blue eyes, so like her mother's, wide with concern. Just researching locations for a photo shoot, I lied, hating myself for it. Meanwhile, Melissa's affair continued. She'd developed patterns. Client. Dinners on Thursdays, weekend property showings that required overnight stays. I documented everything while maintaining our normal routine. Family dinners, helping with homework, weekend outings. I discovered his name was James Whitaker, a 42-year-old executive at a tech company expanding into Denver, married with 3 children in Chicago. I found this out through a simple LinkedIn search after photographing his license plate and running it through a database a private investigator friend gave me access to. The more I learned, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a fling. Text messages I glimpsed on Melissa's phone when she left it unlocked suggested they were making plans. "Soon we can stop hiding," she'd written, and later, "Jay says his divorce will be final by summer." The irony wasn't lost on me that while she was planning her exit with James, I was planning my own exit strategy. I opened a separate bank account and began transferring small amounts that wouldn't raise suspicion. I secured copies of the twins' birth certificates and passports. I researched schools in Portland and spoke with a family therapist about how to eventually tell the twins. Each night, I'd lie awake beside Melissa, studying the face I'd loved for so long. Her high cheekbones, the tiny laugh lines around her eyes, the small mole near her left ear that I used to kiss. I memorized her, knowing that soon everything would change. "You've seemed distant lately," she commented one night, her hand reaching for mine in the darkness. "Just stressed about work," I replied, allowing her to hold my hand while I silently counted down the days until I could finally speak the truth. By early December, my plans were taking concrete shape. Mark had connected me with several high-end wedding venues in Portland that needed a photographer of my caliber. After several video consultations and sending my portfolio, I secured a partnership with Cascade Wedding Collective, a prestigious association that would guarantee steady work. "We can finalize everything after the holidays," their director told me. "We'd want you to start by March for the spring wedding season." March. That gave me 3 months to execute the rest of my plan. I flew to Portland for a weekend under the guise of shooting a destination wedding. Melissa didn't question it. She was probably relieved to have the house to herself for her own plans. I spent the time viewing apartments and schools near the artsy Pearl District. I found a 3-bedroom with large windows that would make a perfect home studio, walking distance from an excellent public school with a strong arts program. The twins would love. I put down a deposit, signing a lease to begin February 1st. "You're sure about this timeline?" the property manager asked as I wrote the check. "Absolutely," I replied, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. Back in Denver, I nearly got caught when Melissa came home early and found me organizing financial documents. "What's all this?" she asked, her eyes narrowing at the spread of papers on our home office desk. "Tax preparation," I said smoothly. "Trying to get ahead of it this year." She seemed satisfied with my explanation, but I became more careful after that. I rented a small storage unit where I began moving irreplaceable items, family photographs, the twins' baby books, heirloom camera equipment my grandfather had given me. Christmas was excruciating. We hosted both our families, maintaining the charade of happy couple while exchanging gifts and making plans for a future I knew wouldn't exist. Melissa gave me an expensive watch, inscribed with "Forever Yours." The irony was almost unbearable. That night, after everyone left, she initiated intimacy for the first time in months. I almost refused, but some part of me wanted this final connection. Afterward, watching her sleep, her copper hair spread across the pillow, I allowed myself to cry silently for what we'd lost. January brought a close call. Melissa used my laptop when hers crashed before an important client presentation. Later, that night, she mentioned casually, "Your browser had some interesting searches. Thinking of taking a job in Portland?" My heart raced, but I'd prepared for this. Just exploring options for a photography workshop series, nothing definite. She seemed to accept this, but I noticed her watching me more carefully afterward. I accelerated my timeline, worried she might discover more. I met with the twins' school counselor privately, explaining that we'd be relocating after a family situation. I framed it as a positive change, ensuring continuity in their education. I registered them at the Portland school, arranging for their records to transfer in February. The most difficult part was preparing for custody discussions. Patricia advised documenting every aspect of my involvement in the twins' lives. I created spreadsheets of doctor appointments I'd taken them to, school events I'd attended, meals I'd prepared. I interviewed potential family lawyers in Portland, selecting one with extensive experience in interstate custody arrangements. By late January, everything was in place. I'd shipped essential equipment to Mark's studio. I'd transferred sufficient funds to my private account. The Portland apartment was furnished with basics. The twins' new school was ready to welcome them. All that remained was the confrontation I'd been rehearsing in my mind for months. I just needed Melissa to make the first move. That opportunity came sooner than I expected. It happened on a Tuesday evening in late January. The twins were at my parents' house for their weekly dinner visit, a tradition we'd started years ago that now served my purposes perfectly. I was in my home studio editing photos when Melissa texted that she needed to talk when she got home. Something in her wording, formal, rehearsed, told me this was it. I took a deep breath and prepared myself for the performance of a lifetime. When she arrived, Melissa looked both nervous and determined. She'd clearly put thought into her appearance. Wearing the emerald sweater I'd once told her brought out the color of her eyes, her makeup subtle but flawless. She'd even stopped for wine, an expensive Cabernet we'd discovered on our 10th anniversary trip. "Can we sit down?" she asked, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of tension. I followed her to the living room, noting how she dimmed the lights and lit a candle. Setting the stage for her confession, I almost admired her theatrical instincts. "David, we've been together for so long," she began, her fingers twisting nervously around her wedding ring. "You're the father of my children, my partner in everything. What we've built together means the world to me." I nodded, saying nothing, watching her struggle through her prepared speech. "But I haven't been honest with you," she continued, tears welling in those green eyes that used to make my heart race. "I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes that I'm deeply ashamed of." She paused, perhaps expecting me to ask questions or show shock. I simply waited, my face carefully neutral. "I've been involved with someone," she finally said, her voice breaking. "It wasn't planned. It just happened, and then it became something I couldn't control." I noticed she used passive language, removing her agency. "It just happened. Not, I chose this. His name is James," she continued when I remained silent. "He's going through a divorce, and we connected during a difficult time in both our lives. I was feeling unseen, and he made me feel valued." Another pause, another expectation of response. I simply nodded for her to continue. "It's over now," she said firmly, reaching for my hand. I allowed her to take it, feeling nothing as her fingers wrapped around mine. "I ended it last week. I realized what I was risking. Our family, our life together. Everything that truly matters." Her tears were flowing freely now, her mascara creating delicate black rivers down her cheeks. The performance was impressive. "I'm telling you because I can't live with the deception anymore. I want us to heal to rebuild, maybe see a marriage counselor. I know I've hurt you deeply, but I'm asking, begging, for another chance. She squeezed my hand, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. Please say something, David. I gently withdrew my hand from hers and took a slow sip of the wine she'd poured. The silence stretched between us, heavy with her expectation of anger, hurt, perhaps even forgiveness. How long? I finally asked, my voice calm. She seemed relieved at the simple question. 7 months, she admitted. It started at that charity auction in June, I nodded thoughtfully. And James knows it's over? Yes, she said quickly. He understands my family comes first. He always knew this was complicated. I allowed a sad smile to cross my face. And when did you decide to end it? Was it before or after you looked at properties in Aspen with him 3 weeks ago? Her face froze, the carefully constructed narrative crumbling before my eyes. What? She whispered. Or maybe it was after you spent the night in his Range Rover last Thursday instead of showing the Peterson estate like you told me. The blood drained from her face as she realized what was happening. How long have you known? She asked, her voice barely audible. I set down my wine glass and looked directly into her eyes. Long enough, Melissa, long enough. Melissa's composure shattered like glass. What do you mean? How? I stood up calmly and retrieved my laptop. October 15th. Greg Matthews was photographing a wedding at Silver Peak Resort in Aspen. You were in the background of several shots with James? Quite cozy, actually. I turned the screen toward her, showing the first photo that had destroyed my world. Her hand flew to her mouth. That's impossible, she whispered. You couldn't have known since October. 4 months, I confirmed. 4 months of watching you lie to my face every day. 4 months of you sneaking around while I packed lunches, attended parent-teacher conferences, and built a life you were planning to leave. Her eyes darted around the room as if seeing it differently. But you never said anything. You seemed normal, happy even. I learned from the best, I replied without emotion. You've been acting for months. I just followed your example. She reached for me, desperation replacing her rehearsed contrition. David, please, whatever you think you know, we can work through this. For the twins, don't! I cut her off sharply. Don't use our children to manipulate me. I opened another folder on my laptop. James Whitaker, executive at Nexus Technologies, married with 3 children in Chicago, not actually getting divorced, by the way. I spoke with his wife last month. Melissa paled. You contacted Diane? She deserved to know, just like I did. I closed the laptop. She was quite surprised to learn about your plans to move to Chicago with him this summer. Tears streamed down her face, but they no longer moved me. It wasn't like that. We were just talking about possibilities. While I was talking about possibilities too, I said, standing up. The difference is, I've done more than talk. I walked to our home office and returned with a folder, placing it on the coffee table between us. What is this? She asked, not reaching for it. My exit strategy. I've accepted a partnership with a photography collective in Portland. I've leased an apartment near an excellent school that's expecting Ethan and Emma next month. I've consulted with a custody lawyer who believes my documentation of being the twins' primary caregiver will be persuasive to a judge. Her shock was genuine now, her carefully planned confession forgotten. You're taking my children, you can't do that. They're our children, I corrected her. And I'm not taking them from you. I'm removing them from a toxic environment. You're welcome to follow us to Portland. Get an apartment nearby. I'll never keep them from you. This is insane, she whispered. You've been planning to leave me for months while pretending everything was normal. Who does that? The irony of her question hung in the air between us. We're leaving February 1st, I continued. My attorney will contact you about the divorce proceedings. I'm not interested in fighting over the house or your real estate business. I just want a clean break and a stable environment for our children. Melissa's shock transformed into anger. You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? You think the twins will just happily follow you to Portland without question? We've already discussed it, I said quietly. Not the details about us, but the move. They're excited about the art programs at their new school. Her face crumpled. You've discussed it with them? Behind my back? Like you discussed leaving with James behind mine? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Melissa looked up, her makeup streaked across her face. I never meant to hurt you. I just fell out of love. It was the first honest thing she'd said all night. I know, I replied softly. But you chose deception. I chose protection of myself and our children. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Tomorrow we can tell the twins together about the separation. They don't need to know the details. As I walked toward the stairs, she called after me. I could fight you on custody. I could make this difficult. I turned back one last time. You could, but then everyone would know why we're divorcing. James's wife has already contacted his company's board of directors. Do you really want that kind of public exposure for your business? The fight drained from her eyes, replaced by resignation. 2 weeks later, the twins and I drove away from Denver toward our new life in Portland. In the rearview mirror, I watched our old house disappear, Melissa standing in the driveway, growing smaller with distance. Dad? Emma asked from the back seat. Are you sad about leaving? I considered the question carefully. I'm sad about some things ending, I answered truthfully. But I'm excited about our new beginning. As we crossed the state line, I felt the weight of deception lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in months, I was moving forward with truth as my compass.